the first book, Heavy Radicals, about America's Maoists is, the relationship with, Maoist China. The person who was essential in the formation of this largest Maoist group in the United States was this person labeled Bergman, who had lived in China, him and his wife, Vicky Garvin, African-American woman. Both of those were veterans of the Communist Party USA, but when Khrushchev denounced Stalin, they became alienated. They ended up moving to China. China was looking for foreign teachers and foreign experts because they'd had this rift with the Soviet Union, and China was also very encouraging of beginning new communist parties that were more Maoistically inclined, if that's actually a word. So Bergman came back to the U.S., and the FBI considered him, in their language, a Chi-Com operative, a Chinese communist. So, I think that's, not true. I think Bergman was, interested in the United States. He considered himself, his fundamental interest was revolution in the United States. He wasn't just carrying out the behests of a foreign power. But as far as the FBI was concerned, their Bergman investigation, which encompassed probably close to 1 million pages, we actually don't have his full file. Wow. As far as they were concerned, there was an element of him being a foreign agent. It all gets very involved. I mean, counterintelligence is essentially to try to keep foreign agents from undermining your society, as well as, it's a proactive intelligence. It's, as opposed to just gathering information, counterintelligence is attempting to disrupt you. I mean, it's almost a warfare model of intelligence. It's not just this benign, we're going to tap your phone and transcribe the interview or something like that.
Gotcha. Now, if people go to your website, aaronleonard.net, you have some new exclusive groundbreaking information about the murder of Fred Hampton?
Yeah, it's Fred Hampton is, the character in Judas and the Black Messiah, which is up for Best Picture on Sunday, the Academy Awards, and the two lead actors, I believe they're both up for supporting actor roles. Excuse me if I'm misstating that. But so Fred Hampton was killed on December 4th, 1969. He was killed by the Chicago police in a raid. The Chicago police had the help of the FBI because an FBI informant gave them a floor plan of the house they were raiding. So the FBI and the CPD, both, essentially have that blood on their hands. I mean, Hampton was killed, as he lay in bed. He wasn't shooting at them. There was no matter of self-defense for the police. It was just brutal. It was probably payback for an incident a month earlier where a Panther had been killed and 2 Chicago cops had been killed. So I went to my mailbox here in California on December 4th, 2020, the 51st anniversary of the killing of Fred Hampton, and there's a little hardback brown envelope with a compact disc, and it's a file I had asked for 5 years earlier for Special Agent Roy Martin Mitchell. I had requested his personnel file because I was doing some research on the FBI in Chicago, a project that didn't really come to fruition. So I load up the disc, and, I'm looking at how much Roy Martin Mitchell weighed throughout the years for his yearly physical, what his blood pressure was, and, how he had evolved in the hierarchy, his different promotions. And then there's this memo from just a couple days after Fred Hampton's killed, and it's directed to Roy Martin Mitchell, basically commending him for his work on a special sensitive area for the FBI, and it's giving him a $200 bonus.
Wow.
And at the bottom it's typed in, related to the Black Panther Party. So it's clearly a commendation for his work and supplying information to the Chicago police via his informant for the murder of Fred Hampton. I actually reached out to the lawyers Jeffrey Haas and Flint Taylor. These two guys did remarkable work in the 70s, bringing a civil suit. I think it's a civil suit against Chicago and the FBI for the murder of Fred Hampton, and they were trying to prove FBI culpability. And when they saw this memo, they were like, "Oh Jesus! If we had this, it would have, made a major impact on what." They ended up winning the case, but this totally reinforced it. It's signed by J. Edgar Hoover, and it's to Roy Martin Mitchell, and it's like job well done, essentially. It doesn't say job well done in the killing of Fred Hampton. It's a little bit more cleverly written than that. So, I got that, and Connor Gallagher's a writing colleague of mine. We dug back into the whole Hampton case, and we produced two major research pieces for Jacobin magazine. I believe it's jacobin.com. You can find it, but you go to my website, it's linked, and we look into the FBI campaign, the FBI effort against Fred Hampton, some of the new stuff we discovered and some of the old stuff that maybe has kind of flown past people. And then we did a follow-up because I got the second batch of documents on Roy Martin Mitchell's personnel file a couple weeks after the first, and also as a result of the JFK Congress demanded any documents relating to the JFK assassination be released. So in the last 4 or 5 years, a whole bunch of stuff has been put online that is tangentially related to the JFK stuff. And in that is this hundreds of pages on the counterintelligence program against the Chicago Black Panther Party. So there's a lot more information about what the FBI was doing against the Chicago Panthers, both Hampton and the group as a whole. So, we've got these two major research pieces that I think add an awful lot more to the story. If people saw the film Judas and the Black Messiah, I think it's a fine film, but it is a film. It's not history. It's drama. It's art. And if you really want to understand the Fred Hampton stuff, I'm afraid you're going to have to do some work. If you just take the film itself as history, you're going to be a little confused, because of, the obligations of art are not the same as the obligations of history. But yeah, so we've got two major things that they get into that. It's all very interesting. I can talk more about that if you like, but.
Yeah, this is all on aaronleonard.net. If you go to the other writings page, the top 4 or 5 documents, they're all fresh off the presses, 331, 2021. It's like brand new stuff. I'm curious, what do you have here on Coretta Scott King, though?
Oh, her file was released some time ago. So the FBI had obviously, we know that the FBI wiretapped Martin Luther King. They were very concerned that his top aide, Stanley Levinson, was a concealed communist. The reason they thought this guy, Stanley Levinson, was a concealed communist is because this person I mentioned earlier, Morris Childs, him and his brother, Jack Childs, were FBI informants in the Communist Party when King was most active in the early 60s. And I believe it was Jack Childs was telling the FBI that Levinson was a concealed communist. It's a lot of detail and some of it's arcane, but that was the basis for signing a wiretap on Martin Luther King, is that this informant Jack Childs said, he's got this communist working with him. And most people kind of miss the fact that the person who signed the warrant, do you know this? Do you know who's... it's Bobby Kennedy who signed the warrant.
I did know that, yeah. The Kennedy warrant is nice, as people think. They were involved in a lot of that stuff, too, with McCarthy and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Kennedy's first daughter,
Yeah.
her godfather was Joe McCarthy, right? I mean, Bobby Kennedy's hardcore anti-communist before that. I mean, I think he might have had by the time he was running for president in '68, I suspect he had changed his outlook on some things. He'd had a wrenching, experience. Anyway, so Coretta Scott King is kind of coming under their purview because once her husband had been brutally murdered, assassinated, Stanley Levinson and her were still talking. So this suspected concealed communist was still in touch with Coretta King. So the FBI file on her remained open. But at this point, the FBI is more concerned that something bad happened to Mrs. King, because when Martin Luther King was killed, there were riots in every major city in the U.S., and they did not want to have anything to do with that happening with her. So they're actually concerned about her security, but they were also, monitoring her. I mean, it was, spying and intrusiveness. And then later on in the file, she's getting this awful mail from these just the most vile racist, and they're investigating that too. So, it's a very interesting thing. It's almost paradoxical. I mean, they're on the one hand, they're investigating her because they're very worried about communist ties. On the other hand, they're, also having to deal with the fact that she's a hugely important public figure, and if something bad were to happen to her, that would be potentially catastrophic nationally and socially. So there's interesting stuff, but that's on truthout.org. There's an article on Coretta King. You just Google Coretta King and Aaron Leonard, it should come up. Also, I think there's a link on my website, too.
And to kind of take things full circle, and then later on it was Al Sharpton who brought Coretta Scott King to the box at the Republican convention where George Bush was being for his re-election there. Over there.
Al Sharpton is, some of these. I used to be kind of up on. I lived in New York, and during the huge days of rage in '88, '89, there were these awful racial killings of this young black man, Yusef Hawkins, by white racists. There was a Howard Beach killing, and Sharpton was in the center. And Sharpton is not a simple character. I mean, he's kind of always been there when these families are grieving, and he's, genuinely empathetic and kind of helps spotlight the thing. But then there are things about his past that are, very curious.
Did you look into his files?
No, I haven't. I just remember reading Newsday at the time when they were talking. I was reading that, and I was also reading how Rudy Giuliani and Al D'Amato were trying to buy crack in Washington Heights. It's because you got to have fun when you read the newspapers. You know what I mean?
Aaron, J Leonard, we're out of time. In 2 minutes, what do you want to leave us with?
Oh, just go to the website. If you're curious about the evolution of music, up to today, the folk singers in the Bureau is a good place to get grounded. I hope I'm telling an entertaining story. I try to write a book that I'd want to read, and I'm not all that patient with dry historical writing. So read it and tell me if I'm wrong. But pick that up. That's what I would leave you with.
Yeah, send him some feedback to his website there, AaronLeonard.net. And you're on Twitter too, right?
It's LeonAAO1.
Thank you so much, Mr. Aaron J. Leonard. Good night.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Thank you.